So stocks are obviously a huge part of a lot of people's investment portfolios, but bonds also do make up, for many people, some part of their portfolio. I describe bonds most easily as like you own a little tiny piece of a debt, essentially, that's owed by someone. You become like a creditor, like a teeny tiny piece of that. How would you describe bonds in the same way that you conceptualize stocks? Like, what's an easy way for a person to see the word bond and be like, that's what that is?
Yeah, so a bond is often considered to be stocks less risky, less volatile counterpart. I always like to compare stocks and bonds to dating. Should we use one of my dating examples?
Yes, please, let's.
Okay, so first let me say that I know that not everybody dates men and not everybody lives in the prison that is the gender binary. So
They got you out here with like your nail file, like sawing at the bar of the gender prison.
But
anyway,
but men are also really easy to make fun of. And so, okay, so imagine that you're dating two guys, and what I will say, or two guys. So imagine first that like risk and reward are very much two sides of the same coin, right? You do not get to have one without the other. And I think that that's actually a really important piece of investing that people lose sight of, that if you want to achieve more returns, then you're going to have to take a little bit more risk. That's simply the way that it is. If anybody tells you that they have an investment that is all reward and is no risk, then what is that? That is a scam. That's a scam. That is absolutely a scam. And so, okay, so imagine that you're dating two different guys. So the first guy number one, his name is Steve. He's a nice guy. He's an accountant. He tucks his t-shirt into his jeans. He thinks that Nickelback is hard rock, okay?
Okay.
So he's going to be there when you get home on a Sunday to watch some Netflix programming, but you're not exactly leaving footprints on the wall every night.
Oh my God.
Right, like this is the type of guy.
Saucy.
I know, like this is the type of guy where you're like, you know, he's reliable, he's gonna be there for you, but you're not exactly like taking ecstasy and a Ibiza on your anniversary.
Right, okay.
So this is guy number one. So this is bonds, right?
Yeah.
And then guy number two, well, his name actually happens to be Guy. Now, Guy is the lead singer of an up-and-coming band. This band could turn out to be the next Smash Mouth, but it could also turn out to be the next Rolling Stones.
Okay.
Like, dating him is a real roller coaster. You might have to hawk some t-shirts out of the side of an airbrush tour van.
Yes.
But you could also be riding an albino tiger around your Miami Beach courtyard while you light your Newport Slims with $100 bills.
Yes.
Right? So guy number two is stocks.
Yes.
And so with bonds, it's a little bit more maybe reliable or predictable, but there is significantly limited upside. With stocks, it is not predictable, but there is more upside, more potential upside. And so that's how I like to think about stocks and bonds. And you can come full circle then to understanding why it is recommended that young people take a little bit more risk in their portfolios because they have the time.
Side.
And so they are more heavily allocated towards stocks. And as you get closer to retirement, when you need a little bit more stability and you don't have as much time to get the stock market to work in your favor, then you shift towards a more conservative or bond-heavy allocation. And so the bond question, just in general, like, is it a good investment right now, is also tough because bonds, just like you said, Chelsea, you are essentially loaning a company like Coca-Cola or the government, like usually the federal government, but it could also be a local government.
Or governments of other countries. I mean, there's so many.
Yep, exactly. And you are loaning them your money, and then they are going to pay you a stated rate of interest for borrowing your money. So they're going to be like, hey, thanks.
You're becoming a creditor, essentially.
Yeah, you're the bank. Like think of a mortgage loan, but like in reverse, right? And so you're loaning out your money. And so how much money you make in a bond is very closely tied to interest rates.
Right.
Interest rates that are more or less set by the government. And right now, what do we know? Interest rates are extremely low, which means it's a great time if you're trying to get a mortgage. It's a tough time if you're on the other end of the equation, if you're investing in debt.
Got it.
And so, like, if you're looking at it right now, like, do bonds look that great? Not super great. Moving forward, do they look great? It's really kind of hard to tell because we don't know what interest rates will be. But I think it's probably pretty safe to say that we'll see interest rates kept pretty low, more or less moving forward. That seems to be the name of the game right now.
Which is intentional, which is something that is done for a variety of reasons, but mostly to stimulate things like you said, it makes it a great time to buy a home. It makes it a great time to make these decisions, but obviously there are drawbacks to it. I think I think a lot of people, which by the way, if you guys are like me, as like charmed by this whimsical and informative way of thinking about investments, we'll talk about it later, but Amanda does have a whole class that like crash courses you on literally everything you need to know about investment that I watched myself, was extremely charmed by, could not recommend more. So we'll talk about that later. And we'll link you guys in the description in the show notes, but it's amazing.